World War II would have gone very differently if certain European kings had been successfully abducted, and they're not the only royals who have been targeted for kidnapping. In the late 1960s, then Prince Charles was studying at Cambridge University in England. During this time, he was very nearly kidnapped, according to his former bodyguard, Michael Varney. As detailed by the book The Secret Royals, Spying and the Crown from Victoria to Diana, since a prince wanted to enjoy himself at college, his security was relaxed a bit. This left an opening that a group of students from Manchester University planned to exploit. The would-be kidnappers were all women, who Varney claims were feminists, who saw their plots as a way to advance their cause. As the book details, they had a very thorough plan and were only foiled when the police got wind. Varney actually confronted one of the leaders, and quite bizarrely, he threatened to spank her if she followed through on the plan. The threat supposedly worked, and the kidnapping was called off. Princess Catharina Amalia of the Netherlands is the eldest daughter of and heir apparent to the current Dutch king and queen. In September 2022, the 18-year-old princess enrolled at the University of Amsterdam, and she reportedly wanted the same college experience that any other Dutch teenager would look forward to. But instead, within a month, she had to leave her dorm and effectively barricade herself in a royal palace due to threats against her safety. This reportedly included possible kidnapping attempts by organized criminal gangs. During a press conference in Sweden, her mother, Queen Maxima, told reporters, "The kidnapping plot means that she doesn't live in Amsterdam and that she can't really go outside, and these consequences are very difficult for her. So for her, it's not the student life that the other students have." The Queen started crying as she then said, "It's not nice to see your child not so happy. She can go to university, but that's it. I think she's very brave."
I'm really proud of her, how she keeps up with all of this, I must say.
In 1974, Queen Elizabeth II's daughter, Princess Anne, was quite the celebrity. She'd just gotten married to Captain Mark Phillips, and a record-breaking 500 million people had tuned in to see their nuptials. But this fame also put a target on her back. Ian Ball was a mentally unbalanced young man, and his kidnapping plot reflected this. He planned to abduct the princess and demand a multi-million-pound ransom that would be paid in £5 notes, and that the Queen herself would get on a plane to Switzerland with the money. In short, none of that was ever going to happen, even if he did kidnap Anne. However, Ball did have multiple guns, and the princess had limited protection. He stopped her car on the way back from an event, and her bodyguard, Jim Beaton, got out to confront him. Within moments, Beaton was shot and his gun jammed, leaving them all sitting ducks. Ball then shot 3 other men who tried to help and kept trying to convince Anne to get out of the car. When more police finally arrived, he ran away before quickly being apprehended. Thankfully, everyone who was shot survived.
We chatted away for a wee while, and she said, thank you very much.
The planned abduction of Norway's Crown Prince Haakon was an extremely convoluted saga. In 1999, the head of the Kosovo mafia, Prince Doboshi, was incarcerated in Norway on heroin trafficking charges. To escape, he concocted a plan that would involve kidnapping Haakon, the 26-year-old heir to Norway's throne, and then Doboshi would demand to be traded in a prisoner swap. Considering the abduction was planned by the Kosovo-Albanian mafia, there was a good chance they could have pulled it off had police not stumbled on evidence of the plot unexpectedly. However, there still was a problem. Beefing up security around the prince was easy, but he was also dating a single mother named Mette-Marit Høiby. She and her young son were soft targets, and her home would be an ideal place for the prince to be kidnapped from, since it didn't have any special security. So the police basically insisted the couple speed up their relationship, as Mette-Marit and her son then moved into the prince's apartment at the palace. Fortunately, it all worked out, as the couple got married in 2001. Edward VIII famously abdicated the British throne in 1936, as he insisted that he couldn't go on being king if he wasn't allowed to marry the twice-divorced American Wallis Simpson. His brother, the new King George VI, gave Edward the title Duke of Windsor and made him governor of the Bahamas. According to the book Operation Willie, the plot to kidnap the Duke of Windsor, July 1940, it was on his way to this new job that Edward was targeted in a kidnapping plot. Adolf Hitler considered Edward to be useful to him, especially once his planned invasion of the United Kingdom succeeded. In fact, Hitler thought that kidnapping the Duke was so important that he even delayed his invasion attempt in hopes that he'd have Edward in his custody by then. The Duke was going to travel to the Bahamas in 1940 via Portugal. By then, the Nazis had taken over Spain. The plan was for the kidnappers to nip over the border, grab the Duke, and offer to make him King of England again if he supported Hitler's invasion. Otherwise, he'd remain their captive. The plot made it to a very advanced stage, but ultimately it was the incompetence of the men tasked to carry it out that saved Edward from this fate.
This is a man who will stop at nothing to usurp the throne. Edward wanted to come back as a Nazi-installed leader.
The English royal family knew they were in danger during World War II. Not only was Buckingham Palace bombed, but there was a good chance that Germany would successfully invade the UK, and that they would become targets of kidnapping or worse. Thus, there were plans to at least get the royals to safety within England if the worst came to pass. Hitler hoped that if he kidnapped the royal family, Britain would have no choice but to surrender. In the book The King's Private Army, Protecting the British Royal Family During the Second World War, Andrew Stewart writes about the detailed plans of Hitler to abduct the royals and of British security forces' attempts to stop him. As Stewart explained to the Daily Mail, Hitler devised a plan for bombers to launch a dive bomb attack on central London. Then paratroopers, dropped from low-flying aircraft, would land in the grounds of Buckingham Palace and capture any members of the royal family they could find. But they were under strict orders not to kill any of the royals, which would take away Hitler's potential leverage. The plan to protect the king was ultimately never needed, as Hitler's invasion of England failed. Prince Edward, Duke of Kent, is a cousin of the late Queen Elizabeth II, who was himself the target of an Irish Republican Army plot in the 1970s. During the period known as the Troubles, the IRA used terrorist tactics like bombings, kidnappings, and assassinations, with the aim of liberating Northern Ireland from the British. While researching his book Queen of Our Times, The Life of Elizabeth, author Robert Hardman discovered previously unseen documents that revealed that the government was aware of an IRA plot to kidnap Edward in 1971. At the time, he was scheduled to go to Northern Ireland with his military unit. The Queen was worried about her cousin and how his presence as a target of the IRA could lead to innocent people around him getting injured or killed. In what was an uncharacteristic move for the Queen, she made her opinion known that Edward shouldn't go to Northern Ireland at all. In response, a Ministry of Defense official promised, "The Queen's wish that the Duke should not be sent into Belfast has been carefully noted." In December 1949, Indonesia achieved independence from the Netherlands. Colonized countries aren't often composed of a single culture, and sometimes after the colonizing country leaves, the factions do not exactly get along. This was the case for a group called the South Moluccans, who were descended from enslaved Africans that the Dutch brought to the island centuries before. After independence, the group was in such danger from ethnic Indonesians that 12,000 of them fled to the Netherlands. The government there promised that they would get their own country. Alas, though, this never happened. Then, in the 1970s, young South Moluccans who had been born in Europe and were now reaching adulthood decided to take matters into their own hands. Over the course of 5 years, South Moluccan terrorists killed innocent civilians at the Indonesian consulate in Amsterdam and its embassy in The Hague, and on a passenger train. And in 1974, a group planned to kidnap Queen Juliana and the other Dutch royals by breaking through a palace gate in an armored vehicle. Fortunately, though, the plot was thwarted. Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power amidst the disorder following the French Revolution, but there were plenty of his own countrymen who wanted to see him gone. Throughout his reign, he was the focus of multiple assassination and kidnapping plots. One group planned to kill him by swapping out his snuff box for one with poison in it. When they couldn't manage that, kidnapping him became their new plan. But that went nowhere as well. The most serious plot to kidnap Napoleon happened in 1804. The goal was to get the old French royal family back on the throne. While this plot was also foiled, it was no thanks to Napoleon's chief of police, Joseph Fouché, who somehow missed many of the threats against his boss. And within a few years, Fouché was openly plotting against Napoleon himself. But even for those who were convicted of being part of the kidnapping plot, Napoleon could be forgiving, as he pardoned one of the conspirators, General Jean Moreau. After Henry VIII's death in 1547, his 9-year-old son ascended to the throne as Edward VI. Since he was so young, he was given a temporary guardian until he was old enough to rule on his own. The role of Lord Protector was snatched up by his uncle, Edward Seymour, whose younger brother Thomas would marry Henry VIII's widow, Catherine Parr. If that all sounds confusing, all you really need to keep in mind is that these two powerful brothers were playing out their sibling rivalry on a national scale. Thomas wanted to control the young king and oust his brother, which eventually led him to attempt to kidnap the king. Not only that, but he also planned to force the teenage Princess Elizabeth, later Queen Elizabeth I, to marry him so that he could set himself up to run the country one day. On January 16, 1549, someone snuck into the bedroom of the king in the middle of the night. Historians don't know with absolute certainty who that person was, but then and now it was assumed that Thomas Seymour was the culprit. The would-be kidnapper was frightened away when the king's dog started barking and alerted people to come running. Thomas was then arrested, tried, and executed. Then known as Prince William Henry, the future King William IV of England arrived in New York in 1781, only about a month before General Lord Charles Cornwallis surrendered to General George Washington at Yorktown that October. But even though the Brits had surrendered, that didn't mean everything immediately calmed down. In fact, it wouldn't be until 1783 that a treaty between the two countries was finally signed. So, in 1782, while William was still in New York, George Washington agreed that he should be kidnapped, although the future president also insisted that he should be treated nicely during their their kidnapping. As detailed by the Journal of American Revolution, the plan was highly detailed and well considered. It's assumed that Washington believed that he could trade a kidnapped prince for a lot of American captives, although it could have blown up in his face and even restarted hostilities with England. It's impossible to know though, since ultimately this kidnapping attempt never happened.